So the first question is actually from Tim from last night. So the first question is, how do we combat or speak to nerd rage? So that's our question for Alex or Thomas. What do you guys think? How do we combat or speak to nerd rage?
I would say probably the number one thing is understanding that nerd rage comes out of a culture saying this is how you express yourself. And so the number one way, especially as Christians, to combat nerd rage is to teach a different way of expressing ourselves. And that comes from relationships. That comes from parent-to-child relationship. That comes from friend-to-friend relationship, saying we can express ourselves in a different, more healthy way, and that makes everyone happier, including yourself.
Well, at the gaming store, we have people playing in tournaments, we have prizes on the line, that kind of stuff. So I was talking in the car on the way here about a guy that would play very regularly. He was a great recruiter, really nice guy. He would bring new people into the game and teach them and train them and let them borrow his books and like all that stuff. You sit down, you play with him, he's throwing things across the table. People will not play with him. And that's why he focuses so much on recruiting, because he'll get someone to actually play with him, right? Because 2 games in and he takes I don't know if you've seen Flames of War, they're little metal tanks, and he takes it, he whips it across the room. I have dents in my walls from this guy throwing things and throwing dice and just like standing up and his chair goes flying back and just and stuff, right? He's not the only one, but he's certainly, as soon as you say nerd rage, he's the first person that I think of course. My answer to that is very different from yours, which actually I think makes it complementary. So, because we come from such different kind of perspectives. So, INTJ. To me, it's all about perspective. The nerd rage comes from not having an internal view on life, right? If I don't get the parking spot at the mall, so what? If I don't get the promotion I'm due, so what? If I don't get the role that I want, so what? It just isn't that important. I know where I'm going. I know it's going to be fantastic there. I'll always roll 6s. So, like, what's the big whoop right now? I don't know what D&D will be like when you're always getting crits, but...
I thought it was 6 on a D20 that you were talking about.
No. So the people that I've seen that I've had to ask to leave, banned from forums, all that stuff comes from people who don't have their value outside of the game personally. They don't have value, and their ability to play the game or their ability to dominate you is what helps them sleep at night, which makes them okay or comfortable in their own skin. They don't, I guess, have someone in their life that loves them for them, and they don't love themselves for them. And so the game becomes the everything, and it's not. It's not.
I was playing board games in particular for the last year and a half or so. I've identified a couple of types of players that are the most unpleasant to play with. The two are, the first is the one who doesn't actually want to play the game, right?
Yeah.
Who does it, you know, and we'll make that known throughout the game. That's unpleasant. The second is the person who can only enjoy the game if they win. That is and I think that's what you're talking about. Is yeah.
Other thoughts?
I've learned from experience that there are players that like to troll on other players, and they just feel like I only run into these in 14 where a player will get into a duty finder, and then they'll sit there and say, "You're worthless. Your character's gear is crap." I will report them, but I will not hate on them, because God made them human. And one of the other problems I've learned is many players treat the company as if they're worthless, because it's the same with every game company, video gaming company out there. You have to learn they're people too. They're made in the image of God. You can't treat them like crap.
One of the best articles I ever read was an article written about 5 geek social fallacies. fallacies that are very common to geek culture in particular, and it speaks particularly to toxicity. The two that I always remember, I forget what the other ones are, I'll have to go read them, but the two I remember is first, that ostracizers are evil, right? So a lot of geeks have experiences, especially in high school, of being ostracized for what they love to do. And so they take into the attitude that I don't want to be that person. And then when another person displays inappropriate behavior or, this is a very common one, bad hygiene as an example, right? So when we don't want to ostracize them because we've taken in this idea that ostracizing is always bad, and it's mostly bad. You know, that's true, and that's why but the idea that it's always bad becomes ingrained in us. The second one is that friends always accept me for who I am, right? Now, as Christians, we should know there's a problem with that, because who we are is flawed, right? But we get this idea in our heads that if people don't accept me for who I am as a person at the moment, there's something wrong with those people. And so both of these attitudes are extremely common, particularly in geek culture. And so it leads to insular cultures that other people are like, I don't want to go into that, because they have all these unpleasant people with all these unpleasant behaviors. Toxicity being a very excellent example of that.
Just one thing, as Christians, with the gospel, one thing the gospel has to really speak into this, especially with both of those, is we have the ability to, when in a relationship with someone, to correct them and still love them. And we know that our self-worth is not based on that relationship, and our love of them is not really based on whether they took a shower or not, for the hygiene. But we are still able to say, hey dude, that's not cool. You know, and still be okay with that person, which is huge. I think you mentioned that you had to, kick people out of the game shop and things like that. And I just want to say that's as a judicial role, right? As the owner of the game shop, you are the law per se in the game shop or the forum. It's your role to keep the place a safe place for everyone.
Yep.
And that's a very important role for someone to have in an MMO. That's the moderators or whatever of the game. They're going to choose who needs a 3-day suspension from the game because of their behavior, etc. Now it's we need to, people we have a relationship with, it is important to say that's not cool. I can't play with you while you're doing that, but still to love that person, and that's a different role.
As an MMO player, I tend to look at my foreman rights and say, is this loving or is this unloving? I am pretty hard on community that wants a marriage a certain way, but I understand. At one of my posts, I pointed out, I still love them, but I can't accept what they're doing because it's sinful.
I guess the follow-up for the question is that, and I think because the biggest issue is toxicity, obviously creating an environment, but a lot of the conversation, the answers in that, I think rightfully so, is like, how do we deal with nerd rage of other? Part of what I would like to maybe ask you guys is, how do you guys deal with like your own frustrations, and how do you, because you understand you are witnesses and like ministers of Christ, like how do you kind of set you as the gamer and desire to do well? Like my roommates, like they know they're hearing me because we'd all play a league together. We would all be in different rooms playing, and they would hear from our room, and I'd be like, yes! And then like 3 seconds later, they'd be like, dang it! And it would not be dang it. And so, how, I guess, what are kind of maybe taking yourself out, maybe the big word that we're learning as the seminary leadership is like, how do you differentiate yourself as a leader, as a Christ follower, and take away from, immense desire sometimes to do well and to be a good gamer and to feel like you're doing well, at your own level, versus, being a leader and, a ministry and a witness for Christ. What are some strategies that you guys have?
So G3 exists because I'm a rager. Like that's why it exists. There's one night in February that I was playing solo queue, and I just was angry, man. Angry as could be. And so on that night, somebody actually challenged me. She's over there. And she said, hey, if you really want to make a change in this community, why don't you go be the change that you want to see? Now, she didn't realize she was quoting Gandhi, but it was like, whoa. Okay.
I think I said exactly like that.
So
I was thinking like,
yeah, like, seriously, like that really hit me. So I'm a part of the problem. And recognizing that we're a part of the problem, there's real gospel truth in that. Because as gospel leaders, the temptation is that we're a part of the solution. And Christ is glorified by getting to include us. He chooses to do that. He's gracious enough to use us as what he's doing with the kingdom. And so when we're used for God's glory, when Moses, a murderer, was chosen to save people, to lead them out of Egypt, a murderer. If there was a murderer standing up here today, I'm not sure if anybody would have come. But we're all murderers in our hearts.
I have a secret.
Yeah. That's the reality, though. We're murderers in our hearts. We're adulterers in our hearts. We're liars in our hearts. And so one of the biggest gospel pieces that's ever come out from a believer that's played with us in G3 is this phrase from Gridiron, who's one of our believers. He's an EMT, and he does great work as an EMT leader on the weekends, literally saving people's lives. And of course, he plays support in League of Legends. Right? Like, why else? Like, you got to play the healer class if you're an EMT, right? And his lingo for this is you have to admit first that you're toxic. If you want to get better, you have to admit first that you're toxic. And so I'm not so much sure if that's an actual answer for you, Tim, to actually say, hey, you can walk away with this. This is a practical thing for you to walk away with. But just recognizing, okay, if I have a problem and I'm raging, that's not someone else's problem, and it's not a quick fix. Jesus came and died to fix this. That's a big deal if that requires Jesus' death to fix this. My sin is that big. That's how big it is. And he's so big that he can fix it, and he can fix everyone else's. He doesn't just fix it, he saves us. And so for us at G3, recognizing, I love that language that Grid has now given us, recognizing and saying, I'm a part of the problem. That right there is a great starting spot.
no, that's great. The distinction between G3 being a service to me, even though I am a Christian gamer, that I'm not the solution for all these other like messed up people is great. And it is, I think Disney Freak is like, you may have said, two words I'm not proud of. And I've probably been in your community for like 24 hours, 36 hours. I'm always like, oh, all right, awesome. I'll check let the door hit me on the way out. Hello! Anyway.
I'm good. I was at the door,
Did you get an answer?
No, yeah, I got an answer. I'm kind of listening to that.
Oh,
Yeah, no,
okay.
it's okay. I think someone's just trying to find
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, that was
Yeah. So my personal experience, I don't tend to be a rager. I don't tend to get angry, especially not explosively angry. And actually part of that reason is because I had siblings who were ragers. I'm talking about the original Smash Brothers on the Nintendo 64, my older brother throwing the controller down and yelling at the screen, playing against the computer and yelling and saying, it cheated, that wasn't fair, that was, and that was since I was a kid, and so that was something, my brother had anger problems and, issues that he's had to work through and things like that, like we all do. So I think experiencing those anger issues secondhand really caused me to not want to emulate that behavior. And so personally, I haven't dealt with it very much inside myself as a specific issue.
It's funny. My brother and I were playing the original Halo, and he kept sticking me in the back of the stick grenade. I was like, you awful person, get out of here. Then I went to go use the controller myself, and I'm like, why do you keep throwing grenades? Oh my gosh, the controller's broken. And the left thumbstick was stuck in. The left trigger was stuck in. I ruined a relationship, and we've never played games ever since.
Wow.
We've never probably played a co-op game. We've always done like hot seat, like Kingdom Hearts or something like that. But which we did 24-hour run through of both Kingdom Hearts in a row. Anticipation of Kingdom Hearts 3.
That sounds
All
amazing.
3 siblings played 24-hour straight.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Our sister is now currently at Disney World and is in my internship because of the interest in that.
That was awesome.
Wow.
Okay, so the next question, since my husband's gone. How can we bridge the gender divide in gaming, and do you think that's an issue this kind of ministry should address? I'm not answering, I'm just asking.
Well, why not?
It's more about respecting the opposite gender, more respecting them for an individual instead of someone that's made in the image of God, moreover, who's an object on the screen.
Yeah, I think first thing I would say the big issue is to acknowledge that there is a gender divide. One thing we really quickly often want to do is be like, no, we like all people, all both genders. That's everyone's included because we don't want to ostracize anyone, right? So everyone's okay. And I think so really the very first thing is to say, yes, there are communities and MMO communities and stuff like that you assume everyone, whether they're playing a male or a female character, is a guy. You assume that really mostly only guys want to come play board games. You assume you have a Halo party in your fellowship hall in your church, and you play Halo for the youth group. You assume it's only the guys who want to come. Oftentimes you don't even invite the girls. Or you have a LAN party. Well, it's a guys' LAN party because girls don't want to come anyway. And so there's even without actively saying, oh, we hate girls are stupid, whatever else, there is something that happens where we create a divide. Often men create a divide. Even it's good guy gaming. It's,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's there.
It is there.
Yep.
You're a jerk.
I'm a jerk. I know. So now I'm a rager and now I'm a jerk.
I know you're just like,
Q&A's not going well.
The idea is to invite all genders into a gaming experience because it's better for them to. I've always said, more women play, more the gaming will be critiqued for good controlling stuff.
But I don't play other games, but are there women who play who just don't let other women play?
Sure.
Is that
Yes.
really common to do? So
It's harder at a board
It's
game.
harder to do with board games.
like in terms of like,
yeah, the hoodie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yentl shows up.
This brings in the question of why is it that there are more men interested in football than women, right? I mean, you can't say that there aren't any women interested in football. That would be a silly statement. But you can look at the number of people who look forward to sitting down and playing the game or participate in fantasy football, who are really look forward to going to games and keeping up with statistics and all that. If you look at that population of people, it's going to be significantly more men than women. Why is that?
Because we have slanted football to be a male-only sport.
Is that true? Or is there something, I mean, are men and women different?
Yep.
You know? Is there something?
Next question.
I mean, just look at this conference, right? Who chose to come here? You know, who's sitting in the circle right now? I mean, guess what? You're an outlier. I mean, why is that? Is it because, or is it a combination of things? Is it a combination of we say these things are for guys? I mean, there's definitely a possibility of that. I don't think that can be discounted, but I don't think we should also discount the differences between men and women in general in the category. And while of course, and obviously there are outliers, one of the problems is when we're talking about anything social, is that we have this tendency not to want to bring in statistical data. Because statistics is unfeeling and it's uncaring. And when we're talking about social issues, we're talking about people, right? But to ignore statistics, to ignore the fact that, well, it looks like women are in some sense an outlier in gaming, you know? Like we acknowledge that it's unusual and we look for ways to correct it, but...
Okay, so as a game designer, I have a lot to say. If you guys are done. But can you just read the question? I want to make sure that I
So how can
really
we
understand it.
bridge the gender divide in gaming? And do you think that's an issue this kind of ministry should address?
So I'm going to speak from first as a husband and then mostly as someone in the industry. So as a husband, I was shocked when my wife played Return to Castle Wolfenstein with me. And it's a first-person shooter, for those that don't know. And it was an incredible time in our marriage. we would play on the same team. We would have jokes at the dinner table that were around that. So it was great. And I don't know why my wife loved shooting Nazis as much as I did, and she hasn't liked any other game since, and stuff. It was just like a weird thing. So I would just point to my wife as an example as this ridiculous outlier that just, you would never expect Return to Castle Wolfenstein to be a game that a girl would enjoy. And then what was even worse was when I was like studying and working on things, she'd fire it up behind me and play by herself, right? It wasn't just to participate with her husband, she actually enjoyed it enough to play it on her own, so that was crazy. So from an industry, that question is for sure an issue. And when you mentioned about PAX has a panel on women in gaming, I don't know if it's in terms of player or designer, but
it depends.
It's,
they do both.
Whatever, like, there's people, women in gaming as designers, programmers, artists, whatever, are celebrated because they're so rare. And so it's a big acknowledgement to the fact that this is, there is this divide. Okay, so why is there a divide? The culture, which is atheistic and says that we came from goo and turned into you, says that there is no difference between men and women. There is in terms of reproduction organs and how we go pee, but other than that, there's no difference. There's no difference up here, right? And the Christian says, no, God took humanity and separated into maleness and femaleness, right? And so it's only through the combination of those two that you fully experience what humanity is. And so what's the problem for game designers that come from the atheistic or naturalistic background, that go through school, they go and they start designing games, and they find that women don't like the same kind of games that men like. Why is that? They're the same mentally. It must be conditioning. It must be because their parents gave them dolls when they were growing up and not fire trucks, and if we can only undo that and stuff. And so now, we've had 20 years, and it's still the same. It's still the same problem, even though people have tried to be progressive in this respect. The very clear, simple answer is coming out of the game industry is men and women value different behaviors. Okay? Men and women value different behaviors. So when a man goes, scores a touchdown, and dances all around, and he's like, I'm the man, right? And all that kind of stuff. Women don't do that. They do not normally do that. I'm not saying no woman ever, but what I'm saying is they look at that and they're like, yeah, good for him. It's not a big deal. But for men, we're like, wow, that is so awesome. I want to be like him. I want to have my thing that celebrates that. So women value different things. So when they go and they play a particular game, they're like, this game's silly. Right? Why? Because it doesn't help me build relationship with other people. That is something I hugely value. Okay? I want to destroy all space invaders. That is very important to me, to protect my home planet and to keep it safe for those around me that I love and don't love. And I can sit by myself and shoot down every single space invader and feel good, and that is a behavior that I like and reward and want to do and stuff. A woman is like, where's the relationship? Where's the cooperation? Where is there a way I can help others and they can help me in that, right? And so what you see in gaming is MMOs really have much more of a 50-50. It's not 50-50 exactly, but if you look at it compared to other things, whether it's the Call of Duties or whatever else out there, why are women playing regularly with the same level of enjoyment as men? Because it has key things, and I don't remember all of them off the top of my head, but I've been reading articles and studies on this. Women highly value communication and relationship. Okay, MMOs really lend themselves to that because most of them are quite boring if you really think about it. And so it's the relationship side. It's like there's enough space in WoW combat to have a conversation while you're defeating a mob. Okay, there just is enough time and space in order to do that. As you see MMOs that are going more action oriented, you'll see the relationship and conversation side go down. And I would posit that women probably don't enjoy those as much. You probably see less women playing in those than you do in other things. Second thing women love to do is to personalize and customize a space, a character, that kind of stuff, right? For me, as a man, when I wake up in the morning, I grab the first t-shirt on the pile, the first pair of underwear on the pile, and the first pair of socks on the pile, and I wear it. And it means nothing. Yeah, but the underpants mean something. But it doesn't mean anything. And what I learned from my wife was she was like, I wore this today because that's how I'm feeling today. And I was like, what? Like there's like a thought process that goes into like what colors and what, like this is how I'm feeling. And she'll change throughout the day because she changes her feeling. Her feelings have changed, therefore she's going to dress differently. Okay, so you go into MMO, what do they allow? The changing of your clothing, right? And I'm playing a mage with the cloth proficiency, and I'm like, why would I make this kind of dress? And I can make it blue and I can make it green, and it has no stat value. It's not like the green one gives me +2 on healing spells and the red one gives me +2 on fire spells. It doesn't. They're all exactly the same. What a waste of time for them to create this in the game. And then my friend of mine, his wife is playing, and she's like, I really like to wear my blue dress in that town. When I go to the town, I put on my blue dress. And when I go to that town, I put on my pink dress. And people know me in that town as wearing that and stuff. And this like boggles my mind. And so as game designers, we are now bringing in the things that women value as part of the game. And there are games like Barbie Fashion Designer, which only value things that women value and doesn't have anything that I value, competition. If you look at men, we're always trying to see kind of who's better than each other and stuff. Women generally aren't like that, right? They're more communal and that kind of thing. And so based on game design, you'll see women gravitate to these things. So why is there a divide? Why, if you go to a Best Buy or whatever, are 70% of the men buying games? Because we're making games that women don't care about. How's that for a long answer?
One of the things I've learned is women like games that add vanity slots or add something that gives an attraction to the game, like designing the house or
decoration, customization.
So that's why my friend rushes Sunfire Cloak on Leona, because she thinks it looks pretty. And I was like, why would you didn't buy anything for the first half of the game. You waited till the last half, and now you finally have health, and you finally have some damaging ability. She's like, I like the way that it makes her like cloak sparkle when I'm like around. I was like, but you're like all insane. Like, subsequently, they don't want to play with me anymore. They're like, Tim, we love you, man, but we're not going to play anymore.
That's exactly what I'm getting at, right? When I look at the clothing, when I look at the clothing side and I say, that's silly. Like, why is there no stat differentiation between these things? It's just for looks. That is how a woman feels about a certain sword. It doesn't look nice, but has great stats. That's silly. Why would you do that?
So would you encourage, like, creating multiple iterations of the same value clothing? Because it gives them options, but yet it doesn't make the team have to like ostracize them because she makes that value choice differently. Is that something that you guys think through?
Yeah. When I go with my co-game designer, I'm the only person designing. So we go to the whiteboard and we start designing up for a role-playing game. certain equipment and stuff. Right? We're like, okay, we're going to have the leather, armor, and then we're going to have the chainmail, and then we're going to have this. There's only one of each. Why? Because we only have stat changes for those things. It doesn't even enter our minds that you would have 4 versions of leather jerkin. Why would you do that? They're all exactly the same. And that's where we lose it, right? And that's where I think you do need women game designers. They need to be there at the table to say, where's the customization? Where is that? And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. It's missing, right? And so that's why they need to be a part of the equation and stuff.
I've often wondered, why do, Final Fantasy introduced swimsuits. And I'm like, why?
It's about time.
Bring us a bikini.
Yeah.
It only has a 15 increase in fire resistance. Why do it?
Can I point out to you that the bikini is probably not introduced for the female gamers?
Yeah.
Let's just get that one out there.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's ridiculous. But I see a lot of players that say they're female wearing that, and they like wearing it.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's silly to you as a man, but it's not silly to them. And we have to respect that.
Well, it is also true, though, that as far as customization goes, a lot of those games, it is a sex selling thing.
Yeah.
So the bikini is often selling sex to the male gamer.
Right.
And that's why the male gamer wants the bikini. And that is an issue that's, a whole other issue within this, of customization, things like that. I also want to say there's a sliding scale. When you think about who cares about relationship, personal talking with people, teamwork, or customizing their character, versus caring a lot more about the competition and the, just focus on completing the task. These are sliding scales that it's not.
Both guys and women like
Right.
that.
And so what I would say is that women on average fall further towards one side of the sliding scale, and men on average tend to fall towards the other side. But if you did like a scatter graph, you'd see there's a ton of overlap.
I'll give you an example. His mom played World of Warcraft, and she loved her cat. She was ecstatic about this little pet that a hunter had that was a cat. I always tried to get her to get a warp stalker or something else, but she just loved that cat from some unknown reason.
So, I want to ask the person here who's actually a girl gamer. That's not me. Tiffany! How do you think we can actually bridge the gap and get, I don't know if it's getting more girls playing with guys or getting girls going to other girls. I don't know. You're actually in those games that I'm not in. I play single player games, so.
I think on the one hand, I have to say I've had generally a really positive experience. So I've played Lord of the Rings Online, I've played Guild Wars 2, and in both situations I've had a ton of experience with, you can get on voice chat and nobody bats an eyelash that you're a girl. I've also been in the global chat, and there's incredible sexism going on, like jokes about women, inappropriate comments. Someone with a feminine name says something and gets shot down solely because someone's like, oh, clearly a chick. Like, I'm not even going to go there. So both sides really do exist, but I found it really interesting that you brought up statistics and kind of that balance, and does this appeal to men, does this appeal to women? There's a great set of graphs by a female engineer about the difference between capacity to do math between men and women. And a lot of people say we have more men in engineering and math because men are generally better at it. Or there are a lot of people who say men and women are exactly the same in engineering and math, and there should be exactly the same numbers, and it's a cultural problem. And her set of graphs demonstrates, yes, on aggregate, men are slightly better at math. But the two graphs people picture are like, here's the curve for men, and here's the curve for women, and the two peaks are here and here. So clearly, way more men are way better, and so this completely explains the divide. When really, if you look at the statistical data, the graphs, men are slightly better, but it's slight. And when you look at the actual number of men and women in math or the sciences, they're way separated. So it's true, it's probably true that more men are appealed to by certain things in games. But it's not enough to demonstrate the difference. So I think that's a really clear indicator that, yes, even though that's probably true, we really do need to address this. I mean, I really think that that's something we have to approach. And as Christians who believe that people have value, I think we have to address the inappropriate behavior that's out there. I think people have to speak up. And when people who have power, people who fit with the community, men in the room, address it. And it's not just the girl saying, dude, stop being a jerk to me. When it's another guy who says, you can't behave that way. Then it's not just the girl saying, I have hurt feelings, I'm really bothered by this. It's someone saying that's actually inappropriate behavior. And so I appreciate when people address toxicity, when people address inappropriate sexual images in games, when people talk about that, and it's not just the women saying, well, I don't really want to just be a sex object in a game, so I'm not going to play the game. So.
I have a follow-up question to that. So, in my Halo clan that I was part of and then helped lead, one of our solutions to one of the problems, and I was very interested in how proactive it was, like, I don't know, I was in high school probably 8 years ago, and so back when, Xbox Live was hitting its peak with the whole Halos and stuff, is that we created a space that was exclusively for women so that they had relationships. Do you feel like that would be a positive or negative? Because I feel there's a sense of like, there's a creating of a space, but then there's also like the reality that for a lot of the guys that would come into a space like that, be like, wait a second, we have to treat them the same way. So it's like that education process. So you have like the Good Guy Gaming trying to create limited toxicity for everyone, but also how do you feel like there's this intentionality to be actively recruiting and saying this is a space for you. But that would be a positive or a negative of like just making it too distinct.
Are you talking about a segregated space that's only for women, or a space that's specifically...
Not segregated, but like, for instance, we had different like divisions or squads. Yeah. And so we had a bunch of different squads at the beginning because that were just meant because it was men. It was mostly guys. But as we started to meet girls and started to interact, we're like, hey, there's a bunch of girls, and we didn't really know what to do with them. And so it's a reality. Socially, stigmatic, that's just the stigma that the guys didn't know what to do, but they were really good. We're like, okay, so how do we include them? So we started to say, okay, so some of the things that we would include them just, but we wouldn't know where to put them. And so we was like, well, why don't we just create a space? And so we were called the LPH course. We called them LPH ladies and gave them their own group. Would you feel like that would be a negative or positive? Because I could feel like you could go either way, and I don't know how you would have reacted feeling the same.
Two things. I feel like it's a step in the right direction to acknowledge we're not really sure what to do with you guys. And we know that this space that exists might make you really uncomfortable. It's called So I think that is something. I would be really, frankly, kind of pissed if someone was like, you're a girl, you're on the girl team. That would make me sad. If I suck and you're putting me on the noob team, I'm totally okay with that. But if I'm ending up in a specific space because I can't play with the boys, that's just kind of sad. I think one of the beautiful things in Christianity, in Christian culture, can be that we recognize each other as people who are created in God's image. Created, yes, differently in God's image. I would acknowledge that. But we can have good relationships and we can learn from each other. And this space that is mostly men can be improved by adding women. And the space that's mostly women can be improved by adding men and by building across those gaps. So I don't think it's a bad reaction, but I think it's not far enough.
Yeah.
Like I said before, I've always believed more women get involved, more improvements will be seen.
I think that's true. I think it's difficult though, and we've seen this in business culture. We say, this is the way business culture is, and if women can't cut it in that culture, we're just gonna kick them out. But when businesses have said, we do really specific things that prevent women from getting into this culture, and they've changed those things, and they've brought women in, we've seen improvements in business, and we have seen, higher profits, honestly, for businesses that can do things like that, because you increase the talent pool. You have more better people. So it's not just enough to say, well, if women want to play, they better get in there and change the culture. I think we have to say, there are things wrong with this culture, we're going to change that. That's going to make it better for everybody.
I like what you said before about like if men are being sexist or whatever, like other men need to step up and do something. Chivalry died, and I don't think it should have. I think now with online gaming, we have a chance to be chivalrous.
And restore it.
Yeah.
I was born with Asperger's, so I struggled with this concept of understanding women outside of video games, and so my understanding became, well, women are viewed this way, and I had to relearn over the past few months that they're human and I should treat them as people, not as objects.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Feminism is the radical idea that women are people too.
So just geographically speaking, Tiffany and I are from the Northwest, and geographically speaking, in Seattle, especially among the college culture there and things, it's drastically different than St. Louis as far as women in gaming. It's a pretty 50-50 split as far as guys and girls who are gamers and are, in Seattle it's a lot more okay to be a gamer, so there's a lot less stigma on either gender to hide it or anything like that. But you have girls who obviously didn't shower and ponytailed their hair and are wearing a hoodie and grungy clothes or whatever to go do the late night thing with other guys, and it's not a big deal. And it is pretty much a gender split, not really not as big of a deal. I think there's still a lot of truth in that culture. Tiffany is an example of that there is different interests within gaming, and that gender does affect that because we do have different personalities based off of gender. But there is, it is a culture that is by gender and not just guys. And so the more we can see that in real life and in person, that's what not real life, right? And so face to face and online as a community that is both genders and is more equally balanced, I think that is showing that it is a more healthy community.
I have met a few Australian gamers. One of them happens to be a very talented artist on Final Fantasy, and she is an example of what I think is a good gamer. She's good at gaming. She's also a very talented artist, and I'm a friend of hers, but we rarely talk because she's in the Australia, but she is a very good gamer, and I have heard a lot of good things about her.
Yeah, so just, I guess by way of wrapping up, we got about a minute left. I
Didn't get to the other questions.
Yeah, right. There's 3 other questions that were asked, 2 other questions, but they were asked by folks who weren't here. So what we'll do is if the panel is good, I emailed those out. And what we can do is we can come up with a couple of answers for those guys. And then we can post those on the website if that works.
Okay.
But it's about to be noon. So the last thing that I would just say, just specifically on this question, I'll just put it this way. I don't want to give a triggered answer. Is Alethea is in the background, right now. Mm-hmm. We all can acknowledge this, right? Mm-hmm. Yes, she's here. We had a segregated space for Alethea throughout the conference, right? And for children, should they come. It was a segregated space. Because should they be in here, it would not have been great for them. It would not have been great for us. We needed to have a quiet space so we could hear and be attentive. It's a good thing. That doesn't mean that we'll orphan our children, and so we need to throw them into it.
Thank you, because I'm about to jump on.
And then Tiffany walked.
Alethea is here. She's here. She's laughing. She's making noises. She's little, and she has no idea about this culture that we have created right now in this space for this hour as we ask questions. She has no idea about it. None. She knows that she loves the people here and she wants to be around us. That's what she knows. And she knows she wants to be over there. That's what she knows. All right? That's not to say that women gamers are ignorant and they don't know about the culture. That's not what that's to say. But that's to say what we're doing right now, even as we listen to her and she interrupts us, she's laughing, she's making it awkward. That's just to say that's a very real difference where she's a child. That's an incredibly real difference. I don't think we need to throw statistical data out to say that we're different than where Alethea is at. We'll acknowledge that. Right? She's younger, okay? She's at a different spot. But to say that we've created a space that right now it's okay for her to be different, for right now, that's a good thing. It's okay for her to be running around doing whatever it is that she's doing. Right? And she can grow and she can learn what it means to come and sit in the circle by participating in the circle. So that's not just to speak to the women's issue, that's to speak to the issue of ostracization. I can't even say the word. It's to speak of the negative attituding that we do in gamer culture. We need to create a space because culture making is multiple people coming together to make a society, to make something, to make a community. And as we do that, whether it's addressing issues about women, or whether that's addressing issues about different aged guys, or whether that's addressing issues about guys from different cultures playing online together, we're all different. We have to realize that we're coming together to create culture all the time. Regardless of whether we're a 2-year-old running in the background, or whether we're in our 30s and we're a young lady. Why is it that if you're in your 30s, you're a young lady, and if you're in your 30s and you're a guy, you're a loser? Anyway, if you're a lady, or if you're a guy, and you're coming into gamer culture, you have to realize that we're people.
Right.
We're people. Alethea is a 2-year-old. She's different,
She's not people.
but she is people. She is different.
Five is the cutoff for
But
that.
she's people. She was made in the image of God. That's what I'm saying, Bart. What you just said about how you had to relearn, women are made in the image of God. They're people. That's fundamentally at this issue of as we come together, Bart, this isn't just a thing you need to work on. This is a thing we need to work on.
Right.
People, regardless of whether you're a woman or a child or a different age.
Or if you have Asperger's
Or if you have Asperger's or if you don't. If you have cancer or if you don't. You're a person made in God's image. And how are we as the gaming community and as Christians going to be leaders in the forefront of this?